So this is the last class for our urban sketching, and we're going to start with the figures in motion. So you see on this lady, the angles of her shoulders and hips change as she's moving. Now the elbows bend at the waist, and usually the arms are opposite the legs in the movement. So as the right arm comes forward, the left leg is going back. Ignore the facial features and just give them some hair. And then remember the leg that is behind gets smaller as it's going away. And the front leg has some foreshortening in the foot there. Try to make sure it looks like that front foot has a bit of weight on it. Now you see how it changes when the person is walking away from you. The front leg disappears behind the back leg there. And they still have a little bit of a tilt in their hips and their shoulders. And the arms and the legs go opposite each other. So I'll start with the person walking away. They're a little easier than the people coming forward. So always start with the torso and give that little angle in the shoulders there and a little twist to the hips. And I've got that back leg with a foot. So you can see that she's moving and the front leg disappears behind her. And then I'll give her a ponytail so that you know that her face is facing forward. Now for the hands, I just kind of draw little mitt hands. You don't want to put all the fingers or details on the hands ever. So you can see the little division here. The head and the hips are about the same size, and that area for the torso and the legs, those are both longer. Those are about a head and a half each. Now I'm going to do this guy who's coming forward. So I've got the forward hand and the forward leg opposite each other. And I have that little calf shrinking down a bit as it's going away and giving some weight to that forward leg. And one easy trick for when you got people coming forward is just put the hand in the pocket. Then you don't have to worry about any hands. Now I'm going to do this lady that's coming forward too. And so when you're putting people in, when you're doing your urban sketching, you have to usually do these just from memory. So you have to kind of remember how bodies move as they're coming forward and moving away. And you just have to draw from memory. People are moving too fast for you to try to document them when they're moving in real time, obviously. So one thing that I find people often tend to do, which I was just doing there, is accidentally make the legs a little too short. Make sure that those thighs and the calf area are about 1.5 heads each. And then that back leg on the forward moving person is always a little awkward to draw. But I like giving them some different looking clothes. And this lady's got some snazzy boots. And I'll forget about the face and just give her some hair. And we try a guy who's standing on his side, so you just see just a twist in the shoulders there. So he's not a complete profile. I have him looking at us. And then one more little practice is adding a kid into the picture. So the kids have bigger heads and shorter legs. And now she's got her little kid in tow there. So try practicing people of different sizes and shapes moving forward and backward, and then you can put them into your scene. And so now let's go into the 2-point perspective. So the same as the 1-point perspective, except you got a corner. So the 2 points go back on either side. And the yellow line there is your eye level. So the vanishing point always happens at the eye level. But in this picture, we're looking in the box instead of on the outside of the box. So the lines are shooting out as they go away. And the red there is the eye level where everything becomes flat. So in this scene, it's kind of like looking in the box with the 2-point perspective. And then we also have the extra element with that ellipse there in the front. So I'll start with the ellipse shape, and that's usually tricky for most people because they can't get past that circle. But you have to squish that circle down and make sure that both sides of the fountain are coming up so it doesn't suddenly become flat at the bottom. It's still round on the bottom too. And I just keep adjusting my levels. See, I have to take away that circle shape that's always wanting to form and kind of squish it back down. And then on the edges, or the edges there where it turns, it doesn't go flat like a corner. It still has a curve. It's not like a total arrow. But at the top of the fountain, that's the eye level, and that's where it becomes flat. So you just have that bottom ellipse going back into space. And then the next thing I do is just mark my horizon, and that is the steps for that background chateau. And the next part I mark in is the tower because everything is relative to that little center tower and shoots out from there. So I find the easiest parts to draw first. And then everything is relative to that. And I'm ignoring most of the architectural details. Again, you just want to get the main shapes and you start from the outside and work your way in. So I use just some little squiggle marks to represent the details in all the carvings. And then lastly, I'll add in some people. And people always give your scene a little story and a sense of movement and also a sense of scale so you know how big everything is. So you can see on here I made my fountain rather exaggerated. And now for the ink. So start with the main outlines and then you build up your contrast. So now I've got the main outlines and I'll just start building up a bit of the shadow shapes. And I'm mostly focusing on this fountain because that is my main focal point for this painting, or sketch, I should say. So I just sort of scribble on my line work to build up the shadow areas. And then I totally color in some of these doors and windows in the background. And then as things fade off to the side of the page, so does the detail and the contrast. That way you keep your viewer focused on what you want them to see instead of wandering off the page. And then I'm giving this one guy some dark pants just to balance out the darks on the other side. So now for some color, and I'm just adding on this light wash of yellow to start. I already had in my head I wanted it to be some contrasting color, and see my ink wasn't all the way dry there. It's okay. So this is a little bit of wet into wet technique where you put some wet color into the paint that's already wet and just let it flare out. And this is how you get all those pretty soft fuzzy shapes. I start with the warms and then dash in some blues for the cool. And I let those people really stand out against the yellow by making them blue. It's all about the contrasting colors in here. And also just creating balance. Now you see how nicely this blue separates from that yellow background. And then I'll balance out my yellow just a little bit with the water. And you can see I'm intentionally not painting every person and not painting every little part of the chateau. I'm leaving a lot of white. And then the purples onto the blue help with the shading. And then I'll just add one final splash of yellow just to balance out. And there you have it.